Let's discuss on day 3 of the RNC with David Polyansky, a Republican strategist who has helped run 5 Republican presidential campaigns, including Ron DeSantis's, and also with us, Axios senior contributor Margaret Talev. Margaret, first to you. When you watch that video of these folks who, some of them just a few months ago, strongly criticized Donald Trump, now come forward and draw an ovation from the crowd endorsing him, what goes through your mind?
It certainly makes sense for former President Trump to try to galvanize all these disparate, the former rivals and the disparate parts of the Republican Party into one. I think Nikki Haley's appearance last night was potentially the most significant or important, although she had sort of the weakest embrace of the crowd, and she was sort of feeling it the least, right? I mean, her support for President Trump was in the service of the Republican Party and in defeating Joe Biden. It wasn't sort of a full-throated endorsement of everything Donald Trump does and has said and believes in his policies and his manner and his character. And in fact, the case she seemed to be making was, you don't have to agree with him, you just have to vote for him. The reason this could be important is because in the choice of J.D. Vance as his running mate, Trump is speaking to the base and to a different segment of the party that is a little more isolationist, a little more populist. In terms of turnout, he does not have to worry about those voters. He needs to worry about the Republicans who moved away from him since the time he was first elected. And what Nikki Haley was doing was giving all of them not just a permission structure, but an appeal to go and cast their ballot anyway, even if they have misgivings.
She repeatedly said you don't have to agree with him all of the time. And you pointed out the crowd, when she first came out, I heard some boos. There was a scattering of boos, but they eventually came around her. David, I'm curious to get your perspective specifically on Florida's governor, someone who was pretty critical of Donald Trump, now coming out and being effusive in his praise.
Well, look, I think the governor did a great job last night. Governor DeSantis delivered a message that I think Republicans and a lot of independents in this country want to hear and feel. And I think, look, you look at last night, you saw 5 of Donald Trump's former serious competitors, 2 from the 2016 race, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, and 3, Vivek, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis from this race. And I think what you're seeing is, as we march out of here at the end of the week and into the real final push of the campaign, you're seeing 2 narratives, and I think last night played into it. It's the Republicans are strong and united, and Democrats right now look weak and divided. And so we can talk about the strength. Look, there's an assassination attempt on the former president. He gets up and, fist pumps and shows up here hours later, versus what we're seeing with the incumbent president right now, where his own party is worried about his ability. But more on the united front here, look what we saw last night. This place is not just the speakers, but the party is energized beyond belief. I've never seen a Republican convention with this much enthusiasm. And you contrast it with the next morning, and we've got Democrats pushing to oust the incumbent president, days after probably this convention ends, in just a week.
You've got Democrats watching this convention
yeah,
and recognizing what they're seeing and understanding that there is a momentum and an energy, at least in this room. This isn't every Republican in the United States,
right,
but it's a lot of important Republicans who help turn out votes.
I think after Saturday, this arena is more in line with the party base all across the country than we've ever seen as a party.
There are also, despite the show of unity, significant policy disagreements even within this room. And you have someone like Nikki Haley coming out in support of former President Trump, while his vice presidential pick on foreign policy doesn't really share a lot of overlap with the former South Carolina governor. I'm wondering what you're looking for in J.D. Vance's speech tonight.
Well, look, I think the value of a J.D. Vance, he's the right pick for the right moment. I don't know that he would have been the right pick, in 2016, and may not be the pick in 2028 when we nominate somebody else. But for the moment, when this is ultimately the fundamentals of this race are still about the economy. People are voting. People are making decisions based on their ability to pay for food on the table, to send their kids to school, even young couples who want to buy their first home and can't because of interest rates. And so his story, his background, the story that he's written and sold and told, coupled with where he's from and what he represents, gives us as a party who recognize the only pathway Democrats have in this race is to sweep the Rust Belt. And we've got a guy who not only has the right narrative, the right story, he also represents it out there. It makes it that much more difficult for Democrats to push through. So I think we're going to hear a very populist-driven, economic-based message.
Quickly, Margaret, your thoughts?
I think no matter how much he talks about policy, this is not going to be how most Americans watching it take it in. They're going to be trying to have an introduction to a person that they may not know yet. You've seen resales of his book skyrocket. By the way, it's a beautiful book, but I would treat it as kind of a historical document on which this J.D. Vance has emerged. If you read this book, you will get a sense of the feeling on the ground in Appalachia, but you will not get a sense of his politics. His politics has changed dramatically since that character in that book, and we're going to get to know him tonight, and so is the country.
You'll also read a lot of praise for Barack Obama, notably in that book. Margaret Talev, David Polyansky, thank you both so much.